Swing a cat and you'll find a World War II strategy game to take your fancy. But having said that, the Pacific theatre is hardly overrepresented, and Order of Battle Pacific lets you play as either the Yanks or the Japanese in a varied campaign. Drawing inspiration from the venerable Panzer General game, this turn-based tactical wargame may not be as flashy or as deep as other titles, but it's a compelling focus on a theatre of war overshadowed all too often by the Western campaigns. Turn-based strategy games can be an odd beast, along with those who play them. On the one hand, you have the core strategy buff who's well versed in the mechanics of the genre, and then you have those who might be interested in such a game, but put off by its innate complexity and overwhelming nature. Order of Battle Pacific tries to cater to both, and for the most part succeeds in making an accessible, if slightly clunky in places, game that has a little more depth to it than on the surface. A lengthy tutorial lays out most of the mechanics you'll use, but its long running time also highlights one of the major flaws of Order of Battle. It's so damn slow at times. This may be just a personal foible of mine, but there are long stretches when you wait for the AI to complete its ponderous moves, and at certain times just plotting your own tactical moves with air and sea units is too pedestrian. Ground units not so much, that's fine, but when you're over air or over sea, the length of time needed to get from one area to another is just way too long. Some of that boredom also comes from the familiarity of Order of Battle. It's heavily inspired by Panzer Corps or General in its mechanics and style. That's not a bad thing at all, but those games have been around for literally decades. It could, if you're as old and grey as I am, come across as a little tedious. Saving itself from that fate is its bright and colourful visuals, complemented by some really fine-sounding battle noises. Sonar pings, artillery and grenade explosions really help to draw you into the conflict, proving that a turn-based game can have just as much impact as the real-time genre. But you didn't come here for the eye candy, and no matter how good units look or sound, it means nothing unless you have something to dress it on. Order of Battle Pacific has a few tricks up its sleeve, and the most important is the supply system. As you advance through enemy territory, your supply line goes with you as long as you maintain a link through the hex tiles. If an enemy unit cuts through that link, then those units stranded on the other side will suffer reduced attack capability and slowly become less effective. It's a really simple system, but one that's easy to understand and changes the way in which you plan out and execute and advance. Supply lines are the unglamorous side of strategy games, yet they are key to victory, and this mechanic is an excellent passive feature of Order of Battle. It requires little micromanagement, just sound strategic planning and execution. This system works well against the enemy too, so isolating units will yield better chances of victory and less chance of taking casualties. A map overlay is accessible by pressing the spacebar and gives you all the info you need in a bold form. It's not an overwhelming feature of the game, yet it's essential to master, and the aristocrats have cracked a way of making this system accessible and deep at the same time. This being the Pacific, supply ships play a vital role in that supply chain on land as well. Lining up a few to assist in an invasion or a particularly strong objective can make all the difference. Destroyers are also involved protecting the supply ships and are capable of providing resources and fending off other naval forces, as well as offering artillery support. Recon teams can operate independently of supply concerns, but don't expect them to do much else other than gawp and report on the enemies. They are incredibly squishy. To balance this, they can move twice in one turn, allowing you to make a quick pass at an enemy base to see what's up before retreating back out of harm's way. Now, core units are what you'll need to manage the closest, as they exist throughout your campaign. The auxiliary units merely have the honour of blinking into life during each map before succumbing to the ether. It made me far more aggressive with these auxiliary units than my core units, though for the most part it's the experienced guys that are going to pack a bigger punch. There's nothing quite on par with enemy unknown's attachment to your troops, but when one of these core units falls, it's going to hurt. Specializations give you a choice of 2 bonuses before a scenario, opting to unlock more advanced tank or aircraft units, for example. As well as the core units carrying across from mission to mission, certain secondary objectives, and even some primary ones if not met, can affect later battles. For example, if the Japanese don't destroy all the US ships in the opening mission, some of them can be used in later missions. I did in fact fail the second mission of the US campaign and found that the game just carried on, putting me at a disadvantage later on, but not so much that it wasn't insurmountable. Touches like this really make the difference between personalising your battles and your units just being glorified cardboard cutouts. What works so well is when you're faced with amphibious assaults on the many Pacific islands the campaign is centred on. Combining sea and land troops to make a landing, form a beachhead, and then using supply ships to provide a resource corridor to allow you to punch through is immensely satisfying. Order of Battle Pacific doesn't exactly shake up the strategy genre, but its focus on the Pacific theatre is a welcome one, and I thoroughly enjoyed my time with it. A few neat features and the accessible nature of the game meant that it's open for newcomers to the genre, but also challenging enough for veterans. The Pacific campaign has been neglected badly by the media and video games, and I'm glad to see a developer has put this important theatre back on the map. Maybe next time I'll get my personal wish of a Commonwealth campaign come true. 8 out of 10.